Welcome to the debate. Our discussion today really digs into the structure of the modern internet economy. Specifically, this assertion that today's big digital platforms, Web 2, they function a lot like powerful rent seeking landlords. And this setup effectively denies users real ownership over their data, their identity, and crucially, the economic value they generate.
Right, and that leads us to the central, maybe quite charged question: is rolling out comprehensive digital property rights, or DPR, using blockchain tech, what we call Web 3, is that the only viable path forward? Is it truly inevitable if we want to restore genuine freedom and, importantly, measurable economic value back to users and creators?
My position is that yes, Web3 DPR is absolutely fundamental. It's a prerequisite for real digital freedom. It kind of echoes historical fights for self-ownership, actually. And I think this tech shift isn't just nice to have, it's essential if we're serious about digital economic justice.
And while I certainly acknowledge the serious exploitation and the value imbalance that's baked into Web 2 right now, I remain somewhat skeptical, particularly about how universal and inevitable this specific tech solution is. I think we need to really scrutinize the structural hurdles to getting everyone on board.
Okay, so my argument really starts with ownership. When I talk about digital property rights, what I mean is the solid, enforceable right, both legally and technologically, for a user to possess, to transfer, to license, and to monetize parts of their digital identity and their creations. You need provable scarcity. In Web 2, well, your reputation, your followers, your entire digital history, none of it's truly yours. I mean, think about it. You could have 1 million followers on Instagram, but you're basically locked in because Instagram can just, poof, delete your account. Your network, your reputation, your livelihood, gone. This isn't just, bad customer service. It's a systematic capture of value that you built. Blockchain, though, offers the tools, like tokens and NFTs, to make these digital assets truly transferable, actually owned by the user. That gives you the freedom to take your Uber rating, your Amazon seller rep, your network, and go somewhere else. It kills those high switching costs that keep you stuck in the landlord's territory.
I see the appeal of the historical parallel, using it to maybe spur action. But let me offer a slightly different angle on the framing. Yes, the critique of value extraction is totally valid. Just look at musicians earning, piddles, as you said, from streaming. But calling the problem digital slavery, I think that's maybe overly dramatic. It risks clouding the real picture, which includes network utility and the element of user choice. Web 2 platforms, with all their issues, provide enormous scale, and people do choose to participate. It's a very different system of control from historical forced servitude. My deeper skepticism, though, really lies with this idea of inevitability. We're talking about a huge societal shift here, but right now, the technical friction is just immense. You mentioned crypto owners, maybe 500 million globally, but only about 10% of them are actually doing things on-chain regularly. That points to a massive adoption gap, right? Likely driven by clunky user experience, very real security fears, high transaction costs. And look, if Web 2 concentrates profits on the few, the Taylor Swifts, the Mr. Beasts, what's the guarantee that a technically complex token system won't just end up doing the same thing, leaving, 99% of people still reliant on middlemen who abstract it all away, probably expensively?
That's a fair point about concentration risk. But I'd push back on dismissing the landlord analogy, because it precisely describes how this parasitic value extraction works. I mean, we're looking at a $1.1 trillion global advertising industry, and something like 70, maybe 80% of that is captured by the Web 2 giants. How? By directly leveraging user data and user effort. Think about that Hong Kong restaurant analogy. A creator pours time, energy, creativity into building up traffic and appeal in a specific digital spot, the digital land. They make that property more valuable with their attention, their content. But what happens? They face rising rent, maybe worse platform terms, higher ad costs, or even the risk of being kicked off entirely because they don't own the underlying digital property. The value they built gets scooped up by the platform owner. This huge, lopsided value grab is exactly what DPR is designed to stop.
Okay, but I just can't quite agree that all the value captured is purely parasitic. I mean, you can't just wave away the infrastructure costs, the server farms, the security systems, the global reach, the reliable uptime that allows creators to potentially reach millions in the first place. Web 2 companies do provide the massive ecosystem that makes literally billions of websites and online presences possible. And another thing, when you pitch DPR as the key to efficient value transfer, you have to deal with the fact that right now, the main reason that small slice of active on-chain users are there is, well, it's speculation, it's trading. It's not primarily this deep relational composable value creation you're envisioning. And that lack of utility-driven activity really complicates the efficiency argument, doesn't it?
Transactions you'd need for true composability. And speaking of efficiency, how easily can this Web3 model, with all its added technical layers, really displace the deeply entrenched habits around advertising and distribution? We know, current centralized ad targeting on Facebook and others is incredibly wasteful. Less than 10% efficiency, some estimate. Huge waste. But tokenization adds significant complexity for the average user, right? Are you absolutely sure that breaking attention into smaller, tokenized networks, needing potentially constant on-chain interactions, is fundamentally more efficient than centralized targeting, even with its waste, given the huge hurdle of just getting people to understand and use it?
Well, I'm not really persuaded by that line of argument because the 1,000 true fans idea demonstrates Web3's potential economic advantage precisely because it eliminates that scattergun wastefulness. Tokenization lets creators interact directly in a targeted way with their high-value users, those true fans willing to spend, say, significantly more than $100 a year. That focus dramatically improves the return on investment. So we move from inefficiently blasting ads at masses to highly efficient network-specific value exchange. Think about the gaming industry again. Maybe $100 billion spent each year advertising games. Often, the cost to acquire just one paying customer is over $80. Now imagine if DPR allowed even a fraction of that $100 billion to flow back to the gamers themselves, through tokens, airdrops, whatever, compensating them for their attention, their participation, their network effect. It completely changes the game. Literally, airdrops are actually a good proof point here. They deliver real, verifiable value directly and only to the proven fan base. That's maximum ROI. And it simultaneously reinforces the user's property right over that value stream. Now, about your point on adoption speed. Yes, we agree current numbers are low, but I believe the transition will pick up speed dramatically, definitely within the next 10 years. Why? Because major external forces are pushing us that way. Forces that almost require on-chain mechanisms. First, think about AI agents. As autonomous software becomes more common, needing to transact instantly, 24/7, they can't really use traditional banking. Too slow, KYC issues, etc. Crypto becomes their natural, native asset. It's almost like a necessary, permissionless hedge in a future increasingly run by AI. Second, you've got huge cultural catalysts coming. Take GTA 6, the hype is massive. Its roleplay servers, which are already these huge microeconomies, are inevitably going to push more activity on chain. When you see decentralized RP worlds emerge that integrate crypto for owning assets, trading, your in-game identity, well, that's going to be a cultural explosion driven by real consumer demand for immutable digital stuff. It'll force millions of users to actually engage with Web3 property rights, whether they plan to or not.
Okay, that's a strong case, I'll grant you. The AI integration point especially feels like a powerful sort of structural driver. But let's circle back to the human side and this abstraction problem. You're talking about, within a decade, billions of tokens, every person, every digital item potentially tokenized, creating this composable, interoperable world where property rights work seamlessly across different platforms. But how does the average Joe or Jane actually make that leap? They go from their separate Web2 accounts, where identity is pretty simple, username, password, to reality where they need to manage private keys, different wallets, potentially dozens or hundreds of different tokens. You use that car industry analogy, which is compelling, related services becoming bigger than the car sales themselves, showing composability's power. But to get that kind of scale,
the tokens have to become invisible, right? Abstracted away so the user doesn't even realize they're using them. So I have to press you on the core technical challenge. How do we realistically jump from the millions of visible, often speculative, technically tricky tokens we have today to billions of invisible, seamless, utility-focused tokens in just 10 years without completely confusing or putting off the vast majority of users?
No, that is the right question to ask. And I absolutely agree. Abstraction is probably the main engineering hurdle right now. But look, the market is already moving fast on this. We're seeing huge progress in managed wallets, in social recovery systems, better fiat on-ramps, all designed precisely to hide the complexity of seed phrases and gas fees from the end user. The really critical part is the transferability of the underlying asset, that property right. The user experience, the UX, that will catch up very quickly once the economic incentives really click. If owning your reputation directly saves you thousands in marketing or makes switching platforms painless, believe me, the market will figure out how to make the interface easy.
So where I land is this. The basic critique of Web 2 exploitation, this idea that not all likes or follows mean the same thing, yet they're all treated as commodities. That problem is crystal clear. And blockchain, yes, it offers this incredible theoretical framework for telling them apart, for composability, all enforced by DPR. But the fundamental challenge, the huge gap we still need to cross, is moving the bulk of our digital lives from those super convenient, centralized, hidden complexity Web 2 systems into a truly interoperable, user-owned, and seamless Web 3 environment. Doing that within your suggested 10-year window, that feels like a major race between what's technically possible and, frankly, human inertia and habit.
And I reaffirm my core point. Ownership, true digital property rights, is the mechanism, I believe the inevitable mechanism, by which the trillions in value currently generated by users will finally flow back to them. The future, as I see it, is one where creators have dependable, insured revenue streams from their verifiable, true fans, all built on tokenized networks that establishes real digital economic property. So, regardless of the exact timeline, this core debate about who owns the data, who owns the reputation, and therefore who really holds the power online, well, that's very much alive and kicking.
Indeed. I think the debate boils down less to if this kind of fundamental shift in value flow should happen, and much more to when and how universally we'll see the necessary technical layers and the user-friendly interfaces adopted widely enough to make DPAR a practical reality for everyone, not just, the early adopters or the technically savvy minority.